Monday, April 22, 2024. I was nervous this morning. I hadn't slept much. I just kept seeing those open, dead eyes. I thanked Phil and Gail for opening their home to me last night. We had some weak coffee. I think they were reusing their grounds, but I was grateful for it. Phil and I went back to my house. The bodies were right where they fell hours ago. We moved them to the edge of the patio. It would be too much work to bury them, but they must be disposed of before they become a health hazard. I have an idea, I said. I picked up Schmidt's pistol and shotgun and gave them to Phil for him to keep. He put the pistol in his pocket. I picked up my AR from the table and put it in the dining room. I got a packing blanket from the garage and we went onto the street. We covered Dick and Fanny with the blanket. As we walked, I told him about Schmidt threatening me and taking all the remaining food from the wagon. I unlocked the Goldsteins' front door. These folks won't be coming back. You can take whatever you and Gail need any time, I said, and gave him the key to the house. I had seen a wheelbarrow in the garage. We took it and stopped at the bodies of Dick and Fanny. I tipped the wheelbarrow on its side, and we wrapped and rolled the first body in. We both lifted it back upright. I took the handles and said, "Follow me." I told him about Alice, her suicide, and that I thought her garage would be a suitable morgue. As he waited out front, I entered the house, went into the garage, unlatched and opened the garage door. We rolled the wheelbarrow in, tipped it over, and deposited the first of 4 bodies. Franklin watched silently from the roof. I wonder what he thought. Did he know what I was doing? The smoke from the valley was starting to burn our eyes. We went back to my house to get some water. Gail was there, scrubbing the blood from the floor and patio and flooding it with pool water. I was a little taken back. She had come across like a woman who didn't like to get her hands dirty. I made a pot of strong coffee, which they consumed with great pleasure. Breakfast was peanuts, power bars, and dried fruit leather. I produced a bag of coffee beans, hand grinder, and Ziploc bag. We went out to the patio where Gail ground coffee as we talked. Franklin doesn't like new things, and especially new people. He kept flying back and forth, looking suspiciously at these new humans on his territory. I told him about Franklin and our relationship. I wondered who had trained whom. We laughed. They thought it was cool. It hit me. That was the first time I had laughed since all this started. Gail had grown up on a ranch somewhere in the middle of Montana. A real country girl, it seemed. When she was 13, her father was accidentally shot and killed when he dropped his hunting rifle. Gail blamed that gun for his death and hated all guns from that time forward. After high school, she had left Montana for an East Coast Ivy League college and had worked hard ever since to erase Montana from her being. The days since the power, water, and gas failures had brought Montana back into her life as if it had always been there, hiding, waiting. Phil was from around Eau Claire, Wisconsin. His folks had run a small 2-location restaurant and worked all the time. Being the oldest, he had almost single-handedly raised his brother and sister. He played football in high school and won a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but he didn't fit in with the politically correct climate at the university and dropped out his junior year. He had drifted from job to job for several years before landing in Hollywood and the independent film world. He was an up-and-coming writer-director and had been gaining a successful career in the indie world. That's where he and Gail had met. I told them my story was much like Phil's. I too had always ventured out, coming to California alone 40 years ago, on a hope and with a dream, only $300 in my pocket, and making a very successful life here. Married, raised 3 kids. Entrepreneur, successful real estate business owner, investor and landlord with multiple industrial properties. Just a kid from the Midwest who got lucky, and hadn't learned helplessness. The Chinese believe luck is where opportunity and preparedness meet. I was as prepared as I could be. Now all I needed was the opportunity. Everything was gone now for all of us. The movie business, properties, bank accounts. The government. Any government under these social conditions would, in time, confiscate all wealth for their own power elite. They would lie and say it was for the benefit of everyone. The inescapable misery of socialism would be shared equally and brutally by everyone, but not them. The future was dystopian tyranny filled with gulags. But first we would have to get past the proto-governments of warlords and entrenched organized criminal gangs. I told them about the 72-hour window of opportunity, and that I should have followed my head and left. I would not have seen Alice, watched 2 people get murdered, then kill the 2 murderers in self-defense. I would have been gone. Instead, the window of escape was rapidly closing. Phil and Gail looked at each other, and Phil said, "We're leaving later today, Bill," and gave me back the key to the Goldsteins. I didn't even know these folks, yet felt a sudden pang of loss. "Where are you going?" I asked. They told me about a very famous and wealthy colleague who had a compound about 25 miles away, deep in the Santa Monica Mountains, Sereno Valley. He and Gail were part of a small community that stood a chance of holding out until things settled down, and said I was welcome to join them. I asked how they were planning on getting there. Gail said they had electric-assisted mountain bikes that had withstood the EMP. Their backpacks were ready and routes selected. Phil thought it would take 4 to 5 hours. If all went well, they paced themselves and moved carefully. "I never pegged you as a prepper," I said. Gail said they didn't think of themselves as preppers, just prepared, and hadn't wanted to be too free with telling people about it. Phil said he had lied to me about not having a gun and apologized. But he didn't know me and wanted to be careful. He had a 20-gauge shotgun and a 9mm Sig Sauer P320. Gail had even taken to cleaning them. I told him I thought the same about them, and that I was prepared a lot more than the average person. They said it showed to someone who was also prepared. I told them of my plans to try for Bishop, to be with my son and his family. I said I had planned generally if something like this ever happened, but it was always a work in progress. I was finding it hard to let go, knowing I would probably never come back here. Maybe that's why I didn't leave days ago. To leave my home and everything I had known for the unknown. The home my deceased wife and I had made, the home that raised 3 kids, the home of memories, pictures, living, growing, dreams, tears, laughter, birthdays, holidays, even Franklin. The home of my life. I had always faced the unknown head-on, always took insecurity in stride. Is this my age sowing doubt into my ears, I thought? "You'll do fine, Bill. Once strong, always strong," Phil said, and Gail agreed. "I saw your dirt bike set up in the garage, very well thought out. And that shotgun rig," Phil added, "impressive." Then he told me he had not kept Schmidt's handgun because it was a murder weapon, and he didn't want the bad karma now attached to it. He said that he had left it in Alice's garage with Schmidt. He would take the shotgun ammo, but leave the gun for the same reason. Phil suggested that we go over to the Schmidt house to see if we could use anything. He had taken the door key from Schmidt's pocket. We all walked over to the house and opened the door. What a mess! They had been hoarders. There was a stench of filth. Gail immediately backed away and said, "I want nothing from this place, nothing at all." Phil and I both agreed. We left, leaving the key in the lock. I looked down at the welcome mat. How ironic, I thought. Walking back, Phil said, "It's time we get going, Bill. We're burning daylight. We'll stop by before we leave." "Okay," I said. Did my voice sound shaky? Damn it, Bill, suck it up, I thought to myself. This is no time to lose your steel. I headed back to my house alone. Then all of a sudden it hit me. It was now just me. Only me. And it was time to leave too. I'm close, but must finalize the leaving. I moved the rest of the guns and ammo down the hill and cached them in other PVC vaults I had put together a year ago. They'll lay right up next to the bottom of a 3-foot concrete swale wall and tuck in under thick brush. They are painted to match the brush and will be invisible. If the brush burns, so will the vaults. I'll leave the gun safe empty and locked open. There were so many useful items I would have to leave behind. I didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands and considered burning my place down when I left. Like Caesar, I would be crossing my own Rubicon. I heard Franklin. He was sitting on the fence as I came to the patio. Sorry, Franklin, I got caught up with other things. He just looked at me. Did he understand, or was he mad and giving me the silent treatment? I fed him and told him I was leaving soon. He just took the food and gave me no acknowledgement. Then it hit me. Yes, there was one more very important thing I must do before I left. Bill, you here? Phil and Gail came around the corner of the patio. Both were dressed gray man, helmets, headlamps, and Phil had his sidearm. We're off now, he said. You going over the top to Stevens Road, then out Amsterdam Highway, I asked. Yes, Gail replied. Good choice. I had that route marked too, if I chose that direction. Phil gave me the key to his house. If you need anything, take it. I told him I was planning to leave tomorrow and wouldn't need it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key to my house. Here, you'll be a lot closer. Take whatever you need if it's still here. There's a lot of usable prep, I offered. Phil and I shook hands, and Gail gave me a big hug. Stay frosty, we all said at the same time, and laughed. All of a sudden, thick smoke blew in. Be well, I said. You too, Phil replied. Okay, Bill, we're out of here. They got on their bikes and gave a thumbs up. Bill looked at me and dropped both keys at my feet. They pushed off, pedaled down the street, turned the corner, and were gone. Lonely. I felt lonely. Enough of that, I thought. You have stuff to do. You don't have the luxury of feeling lonely. The gunfire seemed like it was getting closer. I couldn't see much of what was going on down in the valley because the smoke was obscuring the view. Buildings were burning, and the fire department was no more. I wondered if the entire valley and this neighborhood would go up in flames. I determined that I would finish getting ready, relax the rest of the afternoon, have dinner, get some rest tonight, and leave at first light tomorrow morning. I set about finalizing my kit. It was stuffy in the garage, so I opened the door for some light and air. I looked at my preps, strapped on the 1911, and tried on the packs. Is there something I am missing? Think. Yes, I wanted a picture of Mary and the kids. I can't forget my journal either. And my very last prep was to put the rest of the dog kibble on the back balcony for Franklin and his family. It was sheltered from the wind and rain, and he would find it. Sometimes Franklin would land on the balcony's railing in the morning and look at me sitting in bed with my coffee and laptop. I had my back to the street when I heard a strong hello. I was startled. I turned around and saw two men standing in the middle of the street. Both had sidearms and one a shotgun. I looked at the shotgun Phil had left leaning against the wall, but it's empty. Sorry to disturb you. We're not here to rob or kill you. We live in the neighborhood lower down and are just checking on other neighbors up the hill. I'm fine. I'm leaving in the morning, I said. Can we talk to you about, instead of leaving, staying and fighting for your home? You are not alone. We have a group and can use a few more. Can we talk to you, please? I thought for a few seconds. Okay, I said, but leave your weapons at the curb. No one will take them. They slowly pulled their pistols and laid them and the shotgun on the grass. I went out onto the driveway to meet them. Hi, I'm Bill Albright, I said. Nice to meet you, Bill. I'm Alan Jacobs, and this is Ron Reagan. Nice to meet you, Alan. I turned to Reagan and said with a smile, Mr. President, it's an honor to meet you, sir. He laughed and said, I get that all the time. What's this all about, I asked. Is there someplace we can talk, Alan asked. Yes, right here, I replied. Just a minute, I said. backed up a few steps and closed the garage door. "That's a nice-looking 1911 you have there," Regan said. "Thanks. It's a Colt, 1927. One of 1,000 built that year. It belonged to my dad. Funny, I'm using a museum-quality antique for self-defense." Alan got right to the point. "Bill, we need men and women who have a gun, know how to use it, and are willing to defend our homes on this hill, your home and mine. We have formed a group that has a lot going for it. We have several Vietnam and Iraq War vets, some active and retired first responders, an active duty Navy SEAL, a doctor, a dentist, 2 nurses, and so far 15 or so others that are willing to step up and protect their and others' property. We are not running away. We are not bugging out. These are our homes, and we will defend them. We will fight. It's the patriotic thing to do. Your country, which right now is this neighborhood, needs men to fight for it, not let the lawless just take it." I interrupted. "Well, that sounds great, but I'm leaving in the morning, going to make for Bishop. My son is a deputy sheriff for Inyo County." They both looked at each other. Regan spoke first. "You're one of the lucky ones, Bill. You have that option to leave and take your chances on the road. Many of your neighbors don't have a choice. They are stuck here. But if you go, don't go through Santa Clarita, Castaic, or Lancaster. It's very dangerous out there." "Why?" I asked. I already guessed the answer, but wanted to hear it from them. Alan answered. 4 days ago, the generators at the big county jail in Castaic and the state prison at Lancaster failed and all the emergency power stopped, probably from the EMP. They had to let 7,000 prisoners go, right there and then, into those communities. Those areas have been overrun, including the freeways. They have guns and organization. The story is that the correction authorities were supposed to execute the most violent prisoners right in their cells, but that didn't happen, and they were released or escaped with all the rest of the prisoners. They have killed a lot of folks, raped, robbed, committed arson. It's hell out there." I thought about Fred, his wife, and granddaughter. They drove right into that. "How do you know this?" I asked. "We have heard from several people with two-way radios that live in that area." I had only turned on the two-way once since Fred had left. Regan continued, "You can't go east and take 2 over the mountains, then pick up 395. There's just too many miles of city and too many desperate people to get through. You can't go north, too many criminals in Castaic, Santa Clarita choke points in Lancaster. So your best bet, your only option really, is to go northwest through Ojai, then east to Gorman, and as soon as you get into the Antelope Valley, cut north as soon as you can to stay clear from Lancaster. Once you're in the Owens Valley, it should be a relatively easy run to Bishop. You'll probably find community defenses at Lone Pine and Independence, but you'll be able to transit those towns. It's a longer road, longer way around, more time, fuel, water, and food, but I think it's safer." "Agreed," I said, and told them about my research. The dirt roads and trails I had been on and all the others I hadn't. The gates probably locked, seen on 2-year-old Google Earth satellite images. The government and private property trespass. I said that the route Regan had just laid out was the one I had picked already. "How did you figure that out so fast?" I asked Regan. "That's the route I was going to take to bug out, to get away from Los Angeles and head to Pahrump last week, before I met Alan and changed my mind," he replied. "I was like you, Bill, ready to leave the coming chaos and violence behind, escape across some imaginary frontier to a safe zone. I was a lone wolf prepper, thinking only of myself. I would survive. But then I asked myself, for what reason? To see my sons and grandkids? In what kind of world would we survive? A world of fear? A run-and-hide world whenever evil or violence came calling? What kind of world would I be handing to my grandkids if I ran away to them now?" Alan picked it up. "The CMP has pushed us into a new world. What kind of world do you want, Bill, when all this settles out? Our forefathers in 1776, 1861, and 1941 faced the same pervasive dangers, uncertainties, and existential threats we face now. There weren't any guarantees then, and there aren't any now. In my opinion, we owe it to them and our descendants to fight for an America where the good guys rule and the bad guys lose, not the other way around. It starts right here in this driveway, on this street, in this neighborhood, on this hill. If I am to die, let it be on this hill, protecting my family, the fruits of my life's labor, and the future of those who will inherit this nation, he said with a broad gesture. Then the conversation stopped. The silence roared in my head. Well, thank you for your time, Bill. It was a pleasure meeting you. We wish you all the best. Good luck. If you choose to stay and help us, just come to the bottom of the hill. People are there 24/7. Or if you have a two-way, just call me on channel 3.3. We monitor that one all the time. We shook hands and they left. Now what? I thought. Here I was leaving in the morning. Everything was done. I was ready to flee and escape LA. Ready to give up everything. I'd already accepted the loss. Accepted never coming home again. Had I done that too easily? Was I too ready to throw in the towel? What had I talked myself into as a lone wolf prepper, as Reagan called it? Having believed I was all alone, I couldn't stay because there was no option to stay, no viable reason that staying would be successful. It was just me, suicide. But now what? Maybe all that's changed. Maybe there was another option that hadn't presented itself. If so, the timing was ironic. I had done all that work to hide my stuff away from others who might take it, and then meeting others who might save it. An old saying surfaced in my head. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. For good men to do nothing kept rolling over and over in my mind. It was almost sunset. It had been a long day. I was bone weary. Dinner was pasta and sauce fortified with protein powder, the prepper go-to meal. I pulled an above-average bottle from the rack. Did I want to give this wine to thugs for free? No price to pay? Did I want them ransacking the house and when done smash a flaming Molotov cocktail against a living room wall and laugh as the house and family history went up in flames? Had I decided to just give those little punks that privilege? Really, Bill? You could do that? I asked myself. I saw Franklin through the window, sitting on the back fence. How long had he been there, I wondered. I went to the back door and opened it so he would stay and wait for me. I made my plate and took it and the bottle out to the patio. We'll have dinner together, I thought. My mind was going a mile a minute. Was I changing my mind about leaving? I could always leave, I told myself. If not tomorrow, the day after. God had interesting timing, I thought. He might send you what you need, but not until you need it. Was I so self-reliant to say to God thanks but no thanks? Had I walled myself off from needing other people because of the ever-present need for and pain of my loss of Mary? At sunset, Franklin headed home. I don't think ravens see very well in low light. I went to the old microwave and got the two-way and brought it back out to the patio. Even though I know he's probably miles out of range and hopefully safe in Tehachapi, I made the call. Fred, you copy? Silence. Fred, pick up. Silence. Not even much channel chatter. What there were mainly personal messages. I was really torn as to what to do. I needed more information. I tuned to channel 3.3 and pushed send. Alan, you copy? Gopher Alan came back. Alan, this is Bill Albright. Is Reagan around? Sure, Bill, hang on. I waited a minute. Hi, Bill, it's Ron. Ron, can we meet? I would like to talk to you. Sure, how about the little park? It's about halfway, say 30 minutes? Okay, see you there. I took the lantern, the 911, a jacket, headlamp, and walked down the feeder street. It felt strange. I hadn't left my street for 5 days. So much had happened in that time. It was pleasant to walk downhill. The streets were quiet, but down in the valley there was distant, sporadic gunfire. The smoke was still a problem. How much was burning? Who was dying? Who was killing? Thank God I was up on this hill away from all that, for now. The same hill Alan spoke of. All good men have their own personal hill, for which they will fight for something to the death if necessary. Those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. I approached the park. Ron was already there, sitting in the gazebo. We shook hands and I sat down. "What's up, Bill?" "I gotta tell you, you guys really set my plan on edge. I was all ready to go, gassed and geared up, and gone at first light. Now, I'm not so sure. I don't want to talk to you since you said you were going to do the same thing, bug out, but didn't. I have so many questions." "Okay, what's on your mind?" Ron Reagan asked. "First of all, what makes you think you can hold the fort against hordes of starving people?" I asked. "Well, Bill, that's more of an Alan question, but this is what he told me, and for me it made sense. Remember, an army moves on its stomach, so there is not going to be a starving army at the gates. Starving people have no energy. They don't move fast or far. There is no organization, no zombie apocalypse. The starving will not have a Spartacus leading them. The good thing about the EMP is that now all starving will be local. The starving will be your neighbors. They will need help. To stop the starving threat, you feed it. Maybe not much, but you will have a chance to turn a liability into an asset." "But for how long?" I asked. "If the EMP destruction is nationwide, which is what I heard on the BBC, it will take months for aid to arrive, assuming aid is coming from other sources outside the U.S. Reagan answered, "True, but time is on our side, Bill. Los Angeles has stocked FEMA depots. Not enough for everybody, but enough to take some of the pressure off here and there. It also has a major seaport, and there are several international airports. Alan worked for a company that makes EMP-hardened emergency airport control systems built into a C-17 Hercules, from fly-in to online in 4 hours. And since we live close to where the relief will come in, we'll be first in line. The folks in more rural areas will have to wait, maybe months, for help to get there." Reagan continued, "Also, I know it sounds cold, but to consider the threat level, you have to look at the die-off rate. The really sick, in need of constant care, will go first, followed by those who are chronic and need ongoing medication or procedures, like kidney dialysis. Then there are the old and weak, who have no one and are all alone. They will hide in their homes and quickly starve to death. Violence will take both good guys and bad guys. That gunfire we hear is coming from defenders as well as thugs. There will be no medical care, and simple accidents can be deadly. Infection will kill tens of thousands. Diseases like cholera and dysentery will kill tens of thousands more. There are insect-borne diseases. Plague might return. By 3 or 4 months, it is estimated that most folks will have starved to death, died of diseases, accidents, no medical care, looters and defenders killed, and things will have started to settle down. So if we can hold out for those 3 or 4 months, things should be better than they are today." "Where do you get the food to survive?" I asked. "That's the core problem, and we haven't quite figured it out yet," Reagan said. "It's not going to be easy. Some folks have prepped and can do okay. Others have done nothing to prepare. Those in the group who want to pool what they have can and tighten their belts. We can harvest from the homes where the people are gone or passed away. If someone doesn't want to join the group, we don't take their food from them, but they can't join later just to eat when their food runs out. There may be a We'll Work for Food program. It's not socialist because we don't force folks to join. It's all voluntary. Folks have been willingly helping each other forever. People will be free to leave the group anytime and take their share with them. On my street, someone stole food from someone else and then killed them when confronted," I offered. "We had that on my street too. These are hard times, and this kind of stuff happens. There's nothing to be done. Just protect yourself and others from the predators. I've heard it's happened at least once on every street. A big problem is the disease dead bodies can spread. Some have said to make this park a cemetery. We are going to have to do something soon with those already dead. More folks here on the hill will die in the future and will need a place to bury or cremate them. I was silent for a minute, thinking about Alice, Schmidt and his wife, and their victims, but said nothing. What about the looters and gangs that want what we have? Can we defeat them? I asked. Regan replied, well, again, the EMP stopped a lot of those types from going very far. What looter gangs there are will most likely arise from the local area, be small, and will be dealt with quickly. We can't capture, hold, and feed them. There will be no alternative. They will be dispatched swiftly by summary execution. We have an older, more affluent population in the general area. I doubt they will form gangs to loot their neighbors. And what is the most looted item? Food, life, death, disease, lawlessness, everything, all centers on food and water. But there will be those that will try to take what we have, and that's why we need you and me, to confront and defeat the evil that is bound to find us from time to time. We can triumph, but we need your help to make that happen. I asked, who's the boss? How did they get the job? And what would be my part in all this? Regan replied, there is no boss at this time, just people talking and volunteering for things and using their various talents. Alan is a combat vet, a retired lieutenant colonel who knows tactics, so you might call him a defense expert. There is a doctor and nurses that are directing efforts at hygiene and treating folks. Whoever has skills uses that skill. Then he asked me, do you have a special skill? Real estate, I said with a smile. Ha! I was a loan broker, Regan said and grinned. We both laughed. I think those days are gone. It's a new world, Regan said. And what of my part? I asked again. Well, Bill, as far as I know, if nothing changes, you will do the same thing I do. Just live in your house and become sort of like a block captain. Let your neighbors know we exist, give them some hope. And keep your eye on the hill above for fire or people coming. Just radio and we'll send help. If we radio, you come to help. Like the old Revolution's Minutemen. No pay, no dues, maybe a thank you now and then. I sat there just looking at the lantern. Regan was quiet too. After a minute he said, if you ride out of here tomorrow, I'll understand. That was my first instinct too. Escape. Survive. You'll probably be fine. Mad Max won't be happening just yet, but soon. You'll make it to Bishop and be with your son, but you'll probably never come back here, and everything you leave will probably be gone. If you stay and defend with us, I doubt that will happen. How long have you lived here, Bill? Regan continued. About 25 years, I said. We moved in when the kids were little. You married, he asked. Widowed. She died 2 years ago, I replied. I'm sorry, Bill. What about you, Regan? You married? Was once, but she liked my best friend at the time better than me. Kids, I asked. A son and a daughter. My son and I are close, but I don't know where my daughter is, and haven't heard from her in 15 years. She could be dead. I wouldn't know. Sorry, I said. Where do you live? I asked. On Jamestown, a block down the hill. Yes, I know it, I said. Well, I have to think about this. I'm ready to go. I could leave right now, but I'm waiting for first light, I said. What I had heard this afternoon had added an option that didn't exist for me this morning. It was no longer just me. Now that had changed knowing about the group. We stood up and shook hands. Good night, Regan, I said, and started to walk off. After about 10 yards, Regan said, Hey, Bill. I stopped and turned around. In the valley were several spots of distant fire behind him. The wind must have changed, and the valley was visible. Remember, there are no guarantees, he continued. Were there ever in this life? I replied, turned and walked home. It was late twilight, and the waxing moon hung in the western sky. Everything was set. Now I wasn't sure. I entered my dark house. It was so quiet. I drank a glass of water, then poured a glass of wine. I went into every room, one after another. I just stood there looking at everything. The lantern made moving shadows. Each room had memories, both good and bad. I had no second guesses about the home I provided for my wife and children by the passage of time or the life that had been lived here. My only regret was that Mary was not here with me. If she was, I would not be torn about whether to leave or stay. I would stay for her. There would be no doubt. As I moved through each room, shadows dancing on the walls in the soft lantern light, the events of last night receded from my mind. The stress of the last 11 days faded and was replaced with a kind of peace. "I know you're here," I said out loud. "The kids will be okay, and I will too, and I won't leave you."